Human civilization was built on a quiet assumption that most people never stop to question. We believe Earth is isolated, protected, and separated from the chaos of deep space by unimaginable cosmic distances and the deadly vacuum between the stars. For centuries, science treated interstellar space like a perfect quarantine zone, a frozen barrier too hostile for anything alive to cross. But tonight, that comforting belief may have finally collapsed. According to multiple deep space tracking systems, something entered our solar system that does not behave like any comet, asteroid, or natural object humanity has ever recorded. And now, a fragment of it is moving directly toward Earth. Surveillance arrays operating across 3 continents recently confirmed an event that has triggered silent emergency responses inside global aerospace networks. An interstellar anomaly, known as 3IATLAS, appears to have expelled a highly dense object from its core with impossible precision. This was not random debris breaking apart under solar pressure, nor was it ice evaporating from an unstable comet. The trajectory data suggests something far more disturbing. A structured object was launched from the parent body on a mathematically exact interception course aimed directly at our planet. As governments remain publicly silent, researchers behind closed doors are struggling to explain what they are seeing. The object is descending toward Earth at more than 12 kilometers per second, and every new piece of telemetry deepens the mystery. To understand why this discovery is causing panic inside scientific institutions, you have to look back to the moment it was first spotted crossing the outer boundary of our solar system. At first, it seemed similar to previous interstellar visitors like Oumuamua or Borisov. But almost immediately, astronomers realized this object was fundamentally different. Its trajectory did not fully align with expected gravitational models, and more importantly, it began displaying behaviors that no natural comet should possess. Ordinary comets are passive bodies made of ice, rock, and frozen gases that drift through space as leftovers from planetary formation, reacting predictably to heat and gravity. But from the moment this anomaly was identified, researchers noticed clear signs of internal activity, as if the object was generating heat on its own. Observatories around the world quickly redirected their primary instruments toward the anomaly to analyze its physical characteristics. Deep space telescopes used infrared sensors to measure thermal emissions coming directly from the object's core, and the results shocked the scientific community. At that immense distance from the sun, the object should have been nearly frozen, solid, barely warmer than the surrounding vacuum of space. Instead, it was radiating temperatures far beyond what solar heating could ever explain. That created an impossible dilemma for researchers. In the freezing darkness beyond the outer planets, an object cannot maintain sustained internal heat without an active energy source. Scientists were left considering only a few extreme possibilities, ranging from natural radioactive decay to mechanical systems, or some form of exotic metabolic process. Before scientists could even agree on which explanation was least impossible, another anomaly appeared to challenge our understanding of orbital mechanics. Monitoring spacecraft detected a measurable change in the object's trajectory. At first glance, the adjustment seemed tiny and almost insignificant, but the implications were enormous for planetary defense analysts. Natural objects pushed by sunlight drift away from the solar wind due to radiation pressure. This interstellar visitor did the exact opposite. It shifted slightly toward the incoming radiation, demonstrating controlled non-gravitational acceleration. Something was influencing its motion intentionally, or at least through a mechanism no physical model could explain. Then, orbital observatories captured the event that transformed scientific confusion into outright fear. During a continuous observation period, the object began emitting rhythmic pulses of light at precise, repeating intervals. This was not random flickering caused by rotation, nor was it reflected sunlight from an uneven surface. The pulses were perfectly timed, repeating with mechanical precision before suddenly stopping altogether. No known natural astrophysical process produces optical signals with that level of order and control. Behind the scenes, analysts began reviewing the raw telemetry under restricted conditions, but the most disturbing discovery was still ahead. When powerful spectroscopy arrays analyzed the gas surrounding the object, researchers expected to find common comet compounds like water vapor or carbon dioxide. Instead, chemical analysis revealed something almost impossible embedded within the plume. Scientists detected concentrated traces of adenine, guanine, and cytosine, which are three of the fundamental molecular bases connected to terrestrial DNA. Finding one of those molecules inside an interstellar object would already be extraordinary, but detecting all three together in high concentrations pushed the mathematical probability beyond reasonable coincidence. By this point, scientists were no longer looking at isolated cosmic events. They were staring at an unmistakable pattern, an object generating heat in deep space, altering its trajectory against solar pressure, broadcasting rhythmic optical pulses, and releasing complex biological compounds into space. Then, everything escalated without warning. Deep space monitoring systems recorded a violent mass separation event from the core of the parent object. A dense fragment weighing several kilograms was launched away from the main body at nearly 850 meters per second, a speed impossible to explain through natural ice venting alone. Within hours, orbital tracking confirmed the terrifying truth. The object was not drifting randomly through space, but was heading directly toward Earth. What scientists discovered about the timing of that launch made the entire event even harder to dismiss as a cosmic accident. If the object had separated only a few hours earlier or later, it would have missed Earth completely. The deeper scientists looked into the fragment moving toward Earth, the harder it became to explain using conventional physics or biology. At first, many researchers hoped the strange signals could still be explained by unknown natural processes. But after the mass separation event, that possibility collapsed rapidly because the approaching object was behaving less like space dust and more like something designed to survive. The first crucial clue came from trajectory analysis completed by orbital specialists at leading space laboratories. When researchers reconstructed the exact timing of the ejection event, they discovered something deeply unsettling about the mathematics involved. The launch window required for the fragment to intersect Earth's orbital position was unbelievably narrow. If the object had separated from the parent body only a few hours earlier, it would have passed hundreds of thousands of kilometers away from Earth. A few hours later, and it would have disappeared harmlessly into the dark void of interstellar space. Instead, the release occurred during the precise mathematical interval needed for a direct planetary interception. The probability of that timing happening purely by chance was almost zero. When scientists combined those odds with the biological compounds already detected in the object's plume, the statistical likelihood of a natural occurrence dropped into a range so small that several analysts privately admitted the event no longer resembled natural cosmic behavior at all. And then the biochemical data arrived from independent laboratories. Research teams across 3 continents confirmed that the incoming object possesses an exotic molecular structure unlike anything found in known terrestrial organisms. Every form of life on Earth depends primarily on carbon chemistry because carbon atoms create flexible bonds capable of supporting complex biological systems. The problem is that carbon is inherently fragile. Extreme heat, intense radiation, and vacuum exposure easily damage those molecular chains. Interstellar space should destroy ordinary biology long before it crosses the vast distances between star systems, but this object appears fundamentally different. According to the latest spectroscopic models, the entity contains a silicon-carbon hybrid framework. Silicon sits directly below carbon on the periodic table and forms many similar chemical bonds, but with far greater thermal resistance and structural durability. For decades, astrobiologists theorized that silicon-based life could exist somewhere in the universe because silicon chemistry could survive environments that would instantly kill terrestrial organisms. Until now, that idea remained purely theoretical, but the approaching object may represent the first physical evidence that such biology is real, carrying enormous implications for planetary safety. A silicon-carbon structure would allow an organism to tolerate extreme heat, intense radiation, and deep space vacuum conditions that ordinary carbon-based life could never survive. In other words, the incoming entity may not simply endure atmospheric entry. It may be optimized for it. That realization forced scientists to reconsider one terrifying question. What kind of evolutionary environment could naturally produce a life form already adapted for high-speed planetary impact? Atmospheric entry at over 12 kilometers per second creates surface temperatures exceeding 1600 degrees Celsius. Under those brutal conditions, most Earth organisms would vaporize instantly as proteins collapse and cellular structures rupture before even reaching the lower atmosphere. Yet, simulations based on the object's molecular composition suggest the opposite outcome. Instead of burning apart during descent, the entity may remain chemically stable throughout the entire atmospheric interface. The friction heat that should destroy it could be largely irrelevant to its internal structure. And if that is true, then Earth's atmosphere is not a defensive barrier. It is simply another environment the object was built to cross. As the countdown toward atmospheric entry continued, new observations from orbital space telescopes created even greater concern among researchers. Using near-infrared spectroscopy, scientists detected active chemical reactions occurring inside the object's core. Heat signatures were actually increasing over time rather than decreasing as it moved through space. The object was actively metabolizing. That single observation changed everything about how scientists classified the threat. This was no dormant spore, frozen in deep space, waiting for warmth. It was actively consuming internal resources and generating energy while suspended inside a vacuum colder than minus 150 degrees Celsius. No Earth organism has ever demonstrated anything remotely comparable to this level of environmental independence. Then came the signal that confirmed their worst fears. Several deep space antenna arrays monitoring the object began detecting a repeating radio transmission originating directly from the incoming mass. The signal pattern consisted of 47 precise pulses followed by a silent pause, repeating continuously as the object closed the distance to Earth. Researchers immediately searched for meaning inside the sequence, noting that 47 corresponds to the atomic number of silver, one of the most electrically conductive elements known and a critical material in advanced electronic systems. Whether that connection is meaningful or coincidental remains unknown, but the structured nature of the transmission itself is what truly alarmed analysts, as natural space rocks do not broadcast repeating mathematical sequences. By this stage, internal planetary defense discussions had shifted completely. The possibility that humanity was observing some form of engineered intelligence was no longer being quietly dismissed. It was actively being considered behind closed doors, while the world remained almost entirely unaware. Public statements continued describing the event as a harmless interstellar anomaly under routine observation, but emergency containment teams were already being mobilized quietly across multiple international locations. According to updated trajectory projections, the object's atmospheric entry corridor was no longer expected to terminate over open ocean. The predicted impact zone had shifted toward a populated coastline in South America. That sudden development introduced a level of urgency global defense systems were never designed to handle. Existing response protocols focused primarily on chemical contamination, meteor fragments, or radioactive hazards, all built around the assumption that incoming extraterrestrial material is completely inert. But this object is showing active signs of life and organization. It is generating internal heat, emitting structured signals, and maintaining structural stability under impossible physical conditions. According to leaked briefing summaries, some defense analysts now believe the parent body may not have accidentally released the entity at all. For generations, scientists believed the universe protected planets like Earth through distance alone, operating under the idea that the space between stars was too cold, too radioactive, and too empty for biology to survive long-term exposure. Even the toughest microorganisms on Earth begin to break down under sustained cosmic radiation as DNA fragments and cellular repair systems fail. According to everything we thought we understood, no living system should survive a journey through interstellar space, but the object approaching Earth is forcing researchers to question that entire foundational assumption. As global tracking systems continued studying the incoming entity, analysts attempted to reconstruct the trajectory of its parent body through local galactic space. Using gravitational modeling and velocity calculations, They traced its path backward, reaching an estimate that stunned multiple research divisions. The object may have been traveling through interstellar space for millions of years. That extraordinary time frame creates a massive scientific problem for modern physics and biology. During such a long journey, the object would have been continuously exposed to high-energy cosmic rays, powerful enough to destroy conventional biological chemistry many times over. Radiation at that scale shreds carbon-based molecular structures over relatively short time frames, and even under ideal shielding conditions, no known Earth organism could preserve functional genetic material while drifting between stars for that long. Yet, the approaching entity appears organized, active, and chemically stable, which means one of two possibilities must be true. Either the object remained deeply protected inside the dense interior of the parent body until the exact moment it was released, or its biological architecture contains repair mechanisms vastly more efficient than anything ever observed on Earth. Neither explanation is comforting to planetary protection officers. The first possibility suggests the parent object itself may have functioned as a protective transport system, shielding its internal payload from radiation during transit. The second possibility is even more disturbing because it implies the organism can actively repair damage at a molecular level fast enough to survive environments previously considered fatal to all forms of life. That realization has forced scientists to rethink the fundamental nature of biology itself. On Earth, life evolved under relatively stable conditions, protected by a thick atmosphere and a strong magnetic field. But interstellar space follows entirely different rules. If organisms evolved in environments flooded with radiation and exposed to extreme temperature shifts, natural selection would favor systems optimized for survival under those brutal conditions. In other words, what seems impossible to terrestrial biology may be completely normal somewhere else in the universe. As this debate intensified, additional data from the incoming object only deepened the fear surrounding it. Thermal scans confirmed the entity was still generating internal heat despite the freezing vacuum around it. Not only had it survived interstellar travel, it appeared fully functional upon arrival. According to leaked reports from planetary defense meetings, the object's energy output has actually increased during its final approach toward Earth. That detail matters for a very specific reason. Objects that passively absorb solar heat usually warm gradually and predictably as they move closer to the sun. But the temperature increases detected inside the entity do not fully match external heating models. Researchers now suspect the object may be triggering internal chemical processes as it approaches our atmosphere, almost as if it is transitioning into another operational phase. At the same time, the repeating radio signal detected days earlier has continued without interruption. 47 pulses, pause, repeat. Analysts across several monitoring networks attempted to decode the transmission mathematically, searching for embedded patterns or hidden information structures. Publicly, no official interpretation has been released, but internally, concern is growing as the signal maintains perfect consistency despite changing environmental conditions. Adding to the mystery, the object's rotation rate appears tightly controlled. Most meteoroids or space debris tumble unpredictably through space due to uneven mass distribution, but tracking data indicates the incoming entity is maintaining remarkable rotational stability while adjusting its orientation during descent. Again, the pattern points toward intentional organization rather than random cosmic physics. At this stage, several independent researchers have privately concluded that humanity may no longer be dealing with passive extraterrestrial material. The object behaves less like debris and more like a contained system executing a pre-programmed sequence. Meanwhile, preparations on Earth have accelerated quietly. Military aircraft associated with biological hazard response units have been observed relocating toward South America, while communications traffic between aerospace defense agencies has increased sharply. Officially, none of this indicates public panic, but the timing of these deployments suggests otherwise as the entry corridor narrows significantly. Most people assume the danger ends once an object passes Earth, believing that if it misses the planet, the threat is over. But in orbital mechanics, the most dangerous encounters are often the ones that do not happen immediately. A near miss today can quietly become a direct collision years later through nothing more than gravity and timing. According to the latest simulations, that possibility is now at the center of growing concern inside planetary defense networks. As researchers track both the incoming entity and the larger parent body moving through the solar system, analysts have begun focusing on an invisible region of space known as a gravitational resonance keyhole. A gravitational keyhole is an extremely narrow corridor in space, sometimes only a few hundred meters wide. If an object passes through that exact location during a close planetary encounter, gravity subtly alters its future orbit in a very precise way. The change may seem insignificant at first, but over time, it locks the object into a synchronized resonance pattern with the planet's orbit, guaranteeing a future return on a collision course. In simple terms, missing the keyhole means the object escapes harmlessly, while passing through it means the countdown toward impact has already begun. There is growing concern that the parent anomaly itself may intersect such a corridor during its current trajectory, turning a temporary flyby into a permanent threat. The situation is shifting from complex astronomy into the realities of global management. If scientists discovered that an object's chances of passing through a gravitational keyhole had increased significantly, world leaders would face an unprecedented choice regarding public disclosure. Throughout history, institutions facing existential threats have often prioritized stability over transparency to prevent widespread panic and economic collapse. The incoming entity continues its final approach toward Earth, crossing into the region dominated by Earth and Moon gravitational interactions where the entry corridor narrows further every hour. Something ancient, highly active, and systematically engineered has entered our world, and existing containment systems are about to be put to the ultimate test. What do you think is inside this incoming object, and how should humanity respond to an interstellar visitor that defies our laws of science? Share your thoughts and theories in the comments below. Hit the like button if you found this deep dive fascinating, and make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss an update as this incredible space event unfolds.